I finally did it. I figured out how to mod base building elements, whether you want floating platforms, overlapping platforms, platforms that go through buildings. Maybe you're just looking for something fun to do. And I did it all with this tool called DB Lite for SQL. And if you want to learn how to use that tool, you can check out my last video. Basically, we're just going to edit the database that holds all the information about your world. Again, check out my last video if you want an in-depth tutorial on how to download it, locate your database, and how to locate your database on single player and servers. Speaking of which, everything you see here was done on a single player server, but most of this works on a server too. You just might have some issues with the scaling, and I'll explain more on that later. Now to start things off, these are the commands I'm going to be using throughout the video in case you're new to the game. And basically what I'm doing is I'm setting a flag. This is going to allow us to build a base, and the first element and the only element I'm building right now is the twig foundation. And make sure you log out of your game before you make any edits. This is very important. Could cause crashes and issues. Now once in DB Lite, you need to go ahead and open up your database. You can press this button here. You can learn more again in my last video how to do that. And then on the Browse Data tab, you want to open up the table that says base element. And here you're going to see our flag and our twig foundation. This table also gives us the XYZ position, the rotation, and the scale, as well as the health. And you can see the asset names by sliding open this tab here. It may take a couple of times because some of the names are really long. But nonetheless, we can see our flag and our twig foundation right here. And we can even edit these values on the right side and selecting apply below. Now for this first example, I'm going to show you how to raise the height of a base building element, and we're actually going to raise this up by 2000. X and Y represent left and right, and up and down on the map. The Z location represents the height. Just make sure you write your changes, and you can go back and load your game. Now you can see when I look up into the sky that our base building foundation is floating way up in the sky. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can build upon this as long as it's in the normal building limits. Now that you know how to float an object like that, we're going to turn this door into a ramp. And it might double as an elevator too, depending on how you use it. Once the door is built, I'm going to lay it on its side, and I'm going to kick it at an angle so that we can take it up and down. And we'll even be able to open it up. Check this out. Inside of DB Lite, I've reloaded my database, and now you can see we have two more elements, the first being the frame for the door. And I'm going to go ahead and just press this button to delete it. We don't even need the frame. It's not going to remove my door. And you can see here in the asset text that it is indeed the door. I want to scale this thing out, and this is going to stretch out the width. So my door is actually going to be wider, way wider than it normally is. And like I said, I'm going to use the rotation values to lay this thing flat. So I'm going to start with the roll. This is going to take the door, and it's just going to lay it on the floor, and the rotation pitch is going to actually twist it up so that we can take it up like a ramp. Most of the door is likely going to be on the floor. Make sure you write your changes, and let's go check it out. Out of all the discoveries I've made, this one is my favorite. We can open the door panel, and like I said, half of it's going into the floor, but if you imagine, the other half is way up in the air. I mean, I am way above the island right now. And true to the name of the element, it is an airplane door, so I can go ahead and close it. The best part is if I can get to the very top, activating it here does ride me up, and depending on the length of it, and depending on how wide you make the door, is pretty much going to control the speed. You are just taking this door and stretching it really far. As fun as this idea was, I had to try and use it as a ramp. And for science, I did spawn in a rager and tried to open a door at the same time, and I was not disappointed by any means. Check this out. What a fall. Now we can full scale that element we did before, the foundation, and we can do this by changing the X, the Y, and the Z. Let me tell you, I was quite shocked when I went back into the game and noticed that the textures seemed to fit pretty well. I know they were stretched out a little bit, but given its size, this still looks really, really well. I mean, look at the corners here. The rope still looks like rope, the thread still looks like thread. Now I did try to get some elements to snap to the sides, but that didn't really work. But snapping some stairs into the center of this piece did work. I went back into DB Lite and I just set the scale to the same thing. Set everything to 11 like I did before. And going back in game, it sure worked well. Look at the size of this thing. It didn't even function as stairs anymore. Now, if you're wondering about upgrades, they do work. The deeper I got into upgrading the layers, though, the more disoriented I felt as all these extra pieces of debris were also scaled. But it did work. I do want to note that in servers, things didn't always work as well as it did inside of the single-player database. I found on servers that the building elements would revert back to normal sometimes, so be aware. But in single-player, it saved every time, so probably for the best, right? After continuously doing this, I got kind of curious about some of the other base building elements like this guard tower. This time I decided to upgrade it first to make sure things went through, and I just went back inside the database editor and scaled everything up to 11. I knew things were probably going to be smashed into each other because I didn't raise the height for any one of the pieces. And the main reason I did this is basically to test out if I could climb this ladder, being a little bitty me trying to climb a huge ladder not meant for myself. So just like the stairs, they didn't work. Since we're on the topic of things not working, let me tell you about the turret. As you can see, the turret has a set range. So I decided if I scaled it up to 111 on the width, height, and length, that maybe this would increase the range too. Sadly, when I checked the range on the device, it was still limited to whatever the default value was. Without a doubt, this thing looks very terrifying no matter what the scale is. And even after I scaled it to something around 5 on the width, length, and height, the range became much far worse, and the muzzle flash didn't change either. It was bullets out of a cannon with less accuracy. Now, as I mentioned earlier about these platforms, is that no matter where they lie, you can still build on them. Notice that this one is at a 90-degree angle laying on its side, and I'm still able to attach stuff to it. This gets really good when you start building things up and building platforms that you can attach a ladder to. I had no idea it was going to let me on this ladder, but I went ahead and placed it anyway and was not disappointed. In my experiments, I did some ladders that were upside down, backwards, and things like that, but nothing really seemed to stick in that situation. Now, I don't know why you would need something like this, but at least we know now that these ladders work on 90-degree angles. I couldn't get on that ladder on the top there, but I really can't think of a case for needing either one of these ladders, honestly. In the intro, I mentioned overlapping elements, and if you have any 4 twig platforms, you can actually copy and paste its locations to each platform, causing it to overlap. Once that's done, you can change the rotations of all the elements and they'll overlap with no complaints, no issues, no errors, and everything saves just fine. The only real downfall I see to this is that with the star pattern, you're not really able to add to it because everything was overlapping by the game rules. Either way, I do find that there is potential in this somehow. You're just going to have to use some creativity and see what you come up with. At this point, I think you got a pretty good understanding of the things that I've done in this video. Should be able to come up with some experiments of your own. For me, I personally wanted to create a ramp that I could get over on some kind of vehicle, whether it be the Rager, the motorcycle, and upon getting this thing up here, I just wanted to see if I could make a Rager launcher. Wound up launching myself instead. Look at that range, it's incredible. With this backstop, I was able to make an escalator not only for myself, but for some puppets too. You know, nobody likes walking, especially in Scum, right? What a fine piece of equipment. I thought it was really odd that it had no effect on the vehicles, even though I know it's not supposed to be used this way. But I figured that if it was pushing me as the player, it's gotta push the vehicles, right? It is what it is, I guess. I can't deny overall that the door makes a great elevator. I feel like I can find some ways to make this into usable base building elements some way, somehow. Something more than a fast travel element, right? Either way, if you use this door for something, you gotta let me know what you did in the comments. I'm really interested in hearing what you come up with. Even if it's a trap or some kind of experiment, let me know. Speaking of experiments, this is where I started raging out. Really love the outcome of this Rager launcher that I came up with. I figured if one looked awesome, a couple of them's gotta look awesome, right? So I just kept spamming in console commands. Took a look from the side and watched as they just popped in and popped out of existence. Some of them flew out immediately, and some of them got really wedged in there. It allowed me to do what you see here. I probably started taking this too far, but it did get to a point where I was trying to crush the sentries within the doors. I wasn't too disappointed. I was able to take this door and move this sentry around, and after a few minutes I got bored with the idea, but that didn't stop me from trying to mess around with the other sentries too. I'm not really sure how it happened, but when I went to go crush this sentry, he got wedged in between, and then the second time I did it, it got pushed through the wall and locked itself inside the building. Look how ridiculous this is. There's no way for him to get in, and now there's no way for him to get out. This sentry's stuck forever. Anyways, I hope you like what you saw. Special shout out to my members. Special thank you to my subs. And I'll see you next time. Later.